The bag was just sitting there. Right there on the ground between a gutter and a broken concrete slab, like someone had dropped it by accident. Adewale saw it first. He stopped walking, looked left, looked right, then looked down again. He crouched slowly, unzipped it, and that was the moment both their lives split into two. The life before the bag and the life after it. Emeka saw the money. Stacks of it. Naira notes bundled tight with rubber bands, more money than either of them had ever seen in one place. And instead of running, instead of splitting it and disappearing like any sensible hungry man would do, Adewale zipped the bag back up, stood to his feet, and said 4 words that made Emeka's stomach drop.
We have to return it.
We have to return it. Hello besties. Welcome to the Rhythm's Tales. Please like, share and subscribe. Also turn on the notification button so you won't miss out on more intense stories like this. Now let Emeka tell you everything. Emeka had known Adewale since they were both 7 years old, running barefoot on the same crack street in Lagos, chasing each other between the legs of market women and dodging okadas that had no business going that fast in a narrow road. They grew up on Olatunji Street, a street that the government forgot existed. The kind of street where the gutters overflowed every rainy season and nobody came to fix them. Where the electricity came and went like a tired relative who could not decide whether to stay or leave. Where children grew up fast because there was no time to be slow. And where men grew old before their time because the street took something from you every single day you lived on it. Emeka's family was Igbo, originally from Anambra, but they had been on that Lagos street so long that Emeka spoke Yoruba better than some of the Yoruba boys on the block. His father sold spare parts at the Ladipo market. His mother sold pepper and tomatoes from a small wooden table in front of their one-room apartment. They were not rich, not even close, but they were steady. They ate every day. That was enough. Adewale's family was a different story. Adewale was Yoruba, born and raised on that same Olatunji Street, but his life was harder from the very beginning. His father had died when Adewale was 9. A bus had hit him on the expressway while he was crossing to get to work. There was no insurance, no compensation, nothing. Just a funeral that the street paid for in small contributions, and then silence. After that, everything fell on Mama Adewale. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with deep lines carved into her face from years of worry and sun. She woke up every morning before 4 to cook oji, a thin, warm corn porridge, and she sold it by the roadside from a big pot she carried on her head. She made just enough to keep them alive. Not enough for school fees. Not enough for new clothes. Not enough for anything extra. Adewale had gone to primary school because the government school nearby did not charge much, and Mama Adewale had scraped together what she could. But secondary school was a different thing. The fees were higher. The uniform cost money, the books cost money, the transport cost money. And when Adewale was 13, Mama Adewale sat him down one evening, held his hand, and told him with dry eyes, because she had already finished crying in private, that she could not afford to send him anymore. Adewale did not cry either. He just nodded, the way boys on that street learned to nod when life said no. And the next morning he woke up early and asked the pure water seller on their street if he needed help carrying stock. That was how it started. By the time Adewale was in his mid-20s, he had been hawking for over 10 years. Pure water, groundnuts, chin-chin, whatever was in season and whatever would sell. He worked the expressway near the bus stop, running between slow-moving traffic with a tray on his head or a cooler of water under his arm, calling out his prices in a voice that had grown rough from years of shouting over engine noise and danfo horns. He wore the same faded blue singlet most days. The kind that had been washed so many times it had gone from navy to the color of a pale sky. His slippers were the rubber kind that cost 200 naira at the market, and by the time they got old enough he needed new ones. The soles had worn down so flat you could see his footprint pressed into them. He was lean in the way that men who work hard and eat little become lean. Not the lean of someone who goes to a gym, but the lean of someone whose body has learned to survive on not enough. His skin was very dark, smooth except for a small scar above his right eyebrow from a stone that had hit him during a street fight when they were boys. A fight that had not even been his, but Adewale had stepped in because that was the kind of person he was. Always stepping in. Always the one who could not look away when something wrong was happening in front of him. That quality, that particular quality, was the thing that made Emeka love him like a brother. It was also the thing that scared Emeka most about him. Because in a place like Olatunji Street, in a city like Lagos, in a life like theirs, the people who could not look away from wrong things were usually the ones who ended up paying the highest price. Emeka had managed to finish secondary school, and had done 1 year of a vocational training program for electrical work. He was not rich either, but he picked up small jobs here and there, fixing wiring in people's houses, connecting generators, that kind of work. He earned enough to rent a small room just 3 houses down from where Adewale lived with his mother. They still spent most of their free time together the way they had as boys, sitting outside in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing, watching the street move around them. It was on one of those ordinary mornings that everything changed. It was a Tuesday. Emeka remembered it was a Tuesday because he had woken up that morning already in a bad mood about a job that had fallen through. A man in the next street had promised him work rewiring his shop, and then called to say he had found someone cheaper. Emeka had been counting on that money, so he was already irritable when he fell into step beside Adewale on the way to the expressway, where Adewale was heading to start his morning hawking. The morning was the usual Lagos morning. Loud, hot even though it was still early, smelling of exhaust fumes and frying akra from the woman who set up her stall at the junction every day. People were moving fast, buses were honking. A preacher was already at the corner with a megaphone that was far too loud for that hour. Emeka and Adewale were talking. Emeka was complaining about the job that had fallen through, and Adewale was listening the way he always listened, nodding, not saying much, letting Emeka get it out, when Adewale stopped. Just stopped walking. Mid-step. Emeka walked 2 more steps before he noticed, and turned around. "Weddin," he said. Adewale was looking at the ground near the edge of the road, between a concrete slab that had cracked and shifted and the open gutter beside it. There was a bag there. A black leather bag, the kind that businessmen carry, not too big, not too small, sitting there like someone had set it down gently, and then walked away. "Somebody leave bag," Adewale said quietly. Emeka looked at it. His first thought was that it might be a bomb. You heard stories. His second thought, which came almost immediately after, was that nobody plants a bomb in a cracked-up leather bag near a gutter on Olatunji Street. He stepped closer. Adewale was already crouching down. He picked it up carefully, checked the outside first. No markings, no name tag visible, just a small metal zip and a buckle on the side. He looked around, the way someone does when they feel like they are being watched. The street was busy. Nobody was paying attention to them. Emeka's heart was already beating faster. Adewale unzipped the bag. Later, Emeka would try to describe what he saw inside, and realize there were no words for the specific feeling of seeing more money than you have ever held in your life all in one place. The bag was full of naira notes, bundled tight, held together with rubber bands. There were also some papers, documents of some kind, and a smaller envelope that had a name written on it in thick marker pen. Emeka's mouth went dry. "Adewale," he whispered. Adewale did not respond. He was looking at the money with an expression that Emeka could not fully read. Not excitement. Not greed. Something quieter than both of those things. He picked up the envelope and looked at the name written on it. Alhaji Sool, he said. The name landed on Emeka like cold water. Everyone on Olatunji Street knew who Alhaji Sool was. He was not from their street. His compound was in a different, much wealthier part of the area. A big house behind a high wall with a black iron gate that was always locked. You could see the top of the house from certain angles on their street. A white building with large windows and a satellite dish on the roof. He was a Hausa man, older, heavy in the way that comfortable men get heavy. Always in a clean white kaftan when you saw him being driven past. He had multiple cars. He had people who worked for him. He had that particular quality that very powerful men in Nigerian neighborhoods have, where the air around them feels slightly different, slightly more serious, as if the ground itself knows it is carrying someone important. Nobody knew exactly what Alhaji Sool did for his money. There were different stories. Some said he had made his money in real estate years ago. Some said he had government connections. Some said things that they would only say in very low voices with their eyes checking the door first. Nobody said these things out loud and nobody said them where they might get back to him. What everyone agreed on was that Alhaji Sool was not a man you wanted to be in trouble with. and nobody was quite sure whether returning a lost bag of his money was the kind of thing that would make him grateful, or the kind of thing that would make him ask uncomfortable questions about how long you had been holding it, and what you had touched inside. Emeka stared at the name on the envelope. Adewale, he said slowly. Close that bag. Adewale looked up at him. Close the bag, Emeka repeated. Let us carry it and go somewhere we can think. Not here on the road like this, people will see us. Adewale zipped the bag and stood up. They moved quickly to a small space between two buildings, an alley that was narrow and smelled of damp concrete, and they stood there close together like two men sharing a secret, which was exactly what they were. How much you think is there? Emeka asked. I did not count. We need to count. Adewale shook his head. We are not counting. Emeka stared at him. What do you mean we are not counting? Adewale, do you understand what is in this bag? Do you see what is in this bag? That is money. Real money. That is not 2,000 naira somebody dropped by accident. That is. It belongs to somebody, Adewale said. His voice was flat. Calm. The way his voice always got when he had already made a decision, and was not interested in an argument, just in waiting for you to catch up. Emeka pressed his hands against the sides of his head. He wanted to scream, but he kept his voice low. Adewale. Listen to me. Listen. We do not know this man. We do not know Alhaji Sul. We do not owe him anything. This money is sitting on the ground on our street. Nobody saw us pick it up. Nobody knows we have it. We can take it, split it, and what? Adewale said. And live, Emeka said. And actually live. You understand? Your mama, Adewale. Think about your mama. Think about what this money could do. You could rent her a better place. You could stop hawking. You could. Stop. Adewale's voice did not rise, but it cut clean through everything Emeka was saying. If this was your money, if you had dropped it, if you had lost something that belonged to you, and someone found it, what would you want them to do? Emeka opened his mouth and then closed it. What would you want them to do, Emeka? The silence between them was very loud. Emeka knew the answer. He hated that he knew the answer. He hated that Adewale always did this. Asked the one simple question that made everything complicated feel suddenly simple. He looked at the bag. He looked at Adewale. He thought about all the mornings Adewale had woken up before sunrise to sell water in traffic. He thought about Mama Adewale and her pot of oji and her gray locks and the lines on her face. He thought about his own father's worn hands from years at the spare parts market. And then he thought about what it would feel like to carry money that was not yours. To sleep on top of it. To spend it knowing it came from someone else's loss. He exhaled slowly. You are going to get us killed, he said. But his voice had already given up the fight. Adewale almost smiled. Almost. We have to return it, he said. Those 4 words. The 4 words that started everything. Now, returning a bag of money sounds like a simple thing when you say it out loud. You found it, you know whose it is, you take it back. Simple. But nothing about this was simple. And Emeka knew that even as he agreed to go along with Adewale, because the man whose name was on that envelope was not a simple man. And walking up to Alhaji Sul's compound, 2 young men from a poor street, carrying a bag of his money that they had found on the road, was not the kind of thing you did without thinking carefully about how it might look and how it might go wrong. They went back to Adewale's house first. Mama Adewale was still outside with her oji pot when they arrived, but she had sold most of what she had for the morning, and was sitting on a low stool, resting her feet. She looked up when she saw them come in together at that hour. It was too early for Adewale to be back from hawking, and her eyes immediately went to the bag in Adewale's hand. Adewale, what is that? She asked in Yoruba. He told her. All of it. Emeka watched Mama Adewale's face move through about 6 different expressions in the space of 30 seconds. Surprise. Confusion. Excitement. Brief, just a flash of it. And then something that settled into a deep, tired calm. She was quiet for a long time after he finished. Whose name is on the envelope? She asked. Alhaji Sul. Adewale said. Mama Adewale closed her eyes. She pressed her hands together in her lap, and she was quiet for another moment. And Emeka got the feeling she was praying. Or at least having a conversation with God that the rest of them were not invited to. When she opened her eyes, she looked at her son. "Return it," she said simply. "Mama," Emeka started. She looked at him with those eyes, quiet, exhausted, completely certain, and Emeka stopped talking. "Adewale," she said, still in Yoruba. "Your father was a man who did what was right even when it cost him. That is why we have nothing. But it is also why you are who you are. Do not let hunger turn you into someone your father would not recognize." She paused. "Return it. God is watching this street." Adewale nodded. That was all. Emeka sat down heavily on the step outside. He picked up a stick from the ground and broke it into small pieces one by one, slowly, the way he did when he was trying to calm his nerves. His mind was going fast. Not about the money anymore. He had already let that go. Or at least he was trying to. But about what came next. About the walk to Alhaji Sul's compound. About the gate. About the gatemen. About what they would say when two dusty young men from Olatunji Street showed up with a bag that belonged to their master. He threw the last piece of stick into the gutter. "When are we going?" he asked. "This afternoon," Adewale said. "After he will be back from wherever rich men go in the morning." They spent the rest of the morning at the house. Adewale did not go to hawk that day. He sat with the bag between his feet, not touching it, not opening it again, just sitting quietly the way he did when he was thinking. Emeka went to his own room and changed into a cleaner shirt. Not because he thought it would impress anyone, but because he felt like you should not go and meet a man like Alhaji Sul looking like you had just rolled out of bed. Even if you were poor. Appearances were the one thing you could control. Mama Chidinma found out before afternoon came. This was not surprising. Mama Chidinma always found out things. She lived 2 houses down, a stout Igbo woman in her late 50s who wore her wrapper tied tight across her chest even in the heat, and always had a chewing stick in the corner of her mouth. She had been on Olatunji Street longer than most people could remember, and she had a quality that Emeka had never been able to fully explain. A kind of radar for when something significant was happening nearby. She showed up at Mama Adewale's door before noon. "I heard," she said, standing in the doorway with her arms folded. She did not say how she heard. She never said how she heard anything. She looked at Adewale sitting there with the bag. She looked at it the way you look at something you recognize as dangerous, the way you look at a pot that is about to boil over. "You are taking it back," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," Adewale said. Mama Chidinma sucked air through her teeth. That long, slow Igbo hiss that meant something between disapproval and worry. She came inside and sat down without being invited, because she never waited to be invited anywhere. She looked at Adewale for a long time. "Do you know who Alhaji Sul is?" she said. "Everybody knows who he is," Emeka said. "No," she said sharply, looking at Emeka in a way that made him feel like he had said something stupid. "Everybody knows his name. That is not the same as knowing who he is." She turned back to Adewale. "That man did not build what he has by being a simple person. There are things about that compound, about that family." She stopped, pressed her lips together, shook her head slightly, like she was deciding how much to say. "Mama Chidinma," Adewale said patiently, "I am returning a man's bag. That is all." "That is what you think," she said. "But when you knock on a door like that one, you do not know what comes out." She paused again. "That daughter of his, Amina, you know about her?" Neither of them did. Mama Chidinma looked like she was about to say more, and then she stopped herself. She stood up, retied her wrapper tight, and looked at Adewale one last time. "Be careful," she said. "And if anything inside that house feels wrong, anything at all, you leave. You hear me? You leave that bag on the floor, and you walk straight out." She left before either of them could respond. The silence she left behind was a different kind of silence from the one before she arrived. Heavier. More textured. Emeka looked at Adewale. "You heard her," Emeka said. "I heard her," Adewale agreed. Then he stood up, picked up the bag and said, "It is time to go." The walk to Alhaji Sul's compound took about 25 minutes on foot. It was a different world once you crossed out of their street and moved toward the wealthier end of the area. The roads got slightly wider. The houses got taller. The noise was still there, This was still Lagos, but it was a different kind of noise, less desperate, more settled. Trees lined parts of the road. Actual trees that someone had planted and cared for. Generators hummed behind high walls. The smell of exhaust thinned out, and was replaced by something cleaner. Emeka and Adewale did not talk much on the walk. Emeka was too busy being nervous to talk, and Adewale was too busy being Adewale. Focused, quiet, already somewhere in his head where he had worked out what needed to happen and had made peace with it. The compound was exactly as intimidating as Emeka had imagined. High white walls with broken glass set into the top. A black iron gate, tall and heavy, with a smaller door cut into it for people on foot. 2 gatemen sat outside on plastic chairs in the shade of a mango tree. Both of them in dark security uniforms, both of them looking like they had been specifically selected for their ability to make visitors feel small. One was tall with a shaved head and a neck like a tree trunk. The other was shorter but had the flat, bored expression of a man who has turned away many people, and does not expect today to be any different. They stopped when they saw Emeka and Adewale approaching. "Where you dey go?" the tall one said. "We want to see Alhaji Sul," Adewale said. The shorter one let out a short sound that was close to a laugh. "You want see Alhaji?" Not a question. A statement that meant, "Who do you think you are?" "Yes," Adewale said. He held up the black bag. "We found something that belongs to him. We are here to return it." The 2 gatemen looked at each other. Something passed between them. A quick glance, hard to read. The tall one stood up from his chair. "Wait here," he said. He went through the small door in the gate and disappeared inside. The shorter one stayed, leaning back in his chair, looking at Emeka and Adewale the way you look at something you are not sure is worth your attention. Emeka scratched the back of his neck. He could feel sweat gathering under his collar even though he had just changed his shirt. They waited for almost 20 minutes. Emeka counted a car going past 12 times in his head just to have something to do with his mind. Then the small door opened again, and the tall gateman came back. "Alhaji say make you come inside," he said. He sounded slightly surprised, like this was not the outcome he had expected. They went through the door. The inside of the compound stopped Emeka's thoughts completely for a moment. It was not that it was the most beautiful place he had ever seen. He had seen fancier things in movies, but it was the contrast that hit him. They had just come from a street where people lived 6 to a room and the gutter ran thick every rainy season. And now they were standing on smooth paving stones with flower beds along the edges and a big white house sitting at the end of a clean path. Windows glinting in the afternoon sun. A black Jeep and a silver sedan were parked to the side. Everything was orderly, quiet, almost unnaturally quiet compared to the street outside. The tall gateman walked them to the front of the house but did not take them inside. Instead, he pointed to a seating area to the right of the main door. A small covered porch with chairs and a low table, like a waiting room that existed outside. "Sit here," he said. And then he went inside and the door closed behind him. They sat. Emeka leaned toward Adewale and spoke low. "You good?" "I am fine," Adewale said. He had the bag on his lap, both hands resting on top of it. His face was the same as always, calm in a way that Emeka sometimes found slightly unnerving, because it did not look like the calm of someone who was not scared. It looked like the calm of someone who was scared but had decided to go anyway. "If this man calls police," Emeka started. "We found it on the road this morning," Adewale said. "We came here to return it. That is the truth. There is nothing to be afraid of when you are standing in the truth." Emeka wanted to say that he had seen plenty of innocent people get into plenty of trouble with the truth, but he kept that thought to himself. They waited another 10 minutes. Then the door opened. Alhaji Sul was bigger in person than he seemed when you watched him being driven past in his car. He filled the doorway when he stepped out, not just because of his size, which was considerable, a large man with a wide chest and heavy shoulders, but because of the way he carried himself. He had that quality that certain powerful men have where the space around them rearranges itself slightly when they enter it. He was wearing a deep blue kaftan today, not his usual white, and his gray beard was neat, trimmed close to his jaw. His eyes were small and dark and they moved quickly, taking in Emeka and Adewale in the space of 1 second. He did not smile. He sat down in the large chair across from them. It had clearly been brought out for him specifically, and he looked at the bag in Adewale's lap. "They tell me you found something of mine," he said. His voice was low, deliberate, with a slight Hausa cadence. "Yes, Alhaji," Adewale said. He extended the bag across the table. Alhaji Sul did not take it immediately. He looked at Adewale, just looked at him, for what felt to Emeka like a very long time. Studying him. Reading him. Emeka was trying very hard not to look like a guilty person, which he realized probably made him look exactly like a guilty person. Finally, Alhaji Sul reached forward and took the bag. He unzipped it. He looked inside. He was still for a moment, and then he looked up at Adewale again. "Where did you find this?" he said. "Near the bus stop on Olatunji Street," Adewale said. "By the gutter, between the cracked slab. It was just there. I saw the name on the envelope inside, and I knew who it belonged to." "You knew who I was." "Everybody knows who you are, Alhaji." Something moved across Alhaji Sul's face. Not quite a smile. Something smaller, harder to name. He looked down at the bag again, checked the envelope, looked through the documents. His expression did not change, but Emeka got the sense that something inside him was shifting, some calculation being made. "Did you count it?" Alhaji Sul said. "No," Adewale said. "We did not open it beyond checking whose name was on the envelope." Alhaji Sul said, looking at Emeka for the first time. "My friend," Adewale said. "He was with me when I found it." Alhaji Sul looked at Emeka for another moment, and then looked back at Adewale. "And you did not think to keep it?" This was the question Emeka had been dreading. Not because it was a trap, but because the honest answer to it was complicated, and he was not sure how Adewale would handle it. But Adewale answered it the same way he answered everything. "I thought about it," Adewale said. "I will not lie to you. I thought about it. But it was not mine." Alhaji Sul sat back in his chair. He put both hands on his knees and looked at Adewale with an expression that Emeka could not fully decode. It was not warmth, exactly. It was not cold either. It was the expression of a man who had lived long enough that very little surprised him anymore. And something had just surprised him slightly. "What is your name?" he asked. "Adewale." "Adewale." He said the name the way someone does when they are filing it away somewhere important. "And what do you do?" "I hawk on the expressway. Pure water, groundnuts." Alhaji Sul nodded slowly. He looked at the bag one more time, then back at Adewale. "You may go," he said. "I will not forget this." That was all. No mention of a reward. No effusive thank you. Just "you may go." The gateman appeared from somewhere. Emeka had not even seen him come out, and walked them back to the small door in the iron gate. When it clicked shut behind them, and they were back on the street outside the compound wall, Emeka let out a breath that felt like he had been holding it for the entire time they were inside. "Okay," he said. "Okay. We are alive." Adewale almost smiled again. "You thought we were going to die?" "I thought many things," Emeka said honestly. They walked back toward Olatunji Street. Emeka's mind was already processing what had just happened, turning it over. He was glad it was done. He was glad they were walking away with nothing following them. He told himself that was enough. That was a good ending. Do the right thing, get out safe, move on. He did not know yet that it was not an ending at all. It was only the beginning. Word got out by evening. This was Olatunji Street. Word always got out. Emeka did not know exactly how it spread, whether Mama Chidinma had talked, or whether one of the gatemen at Alhaji Sul's compound had mentioned it to someone who mentioned it to someone else. But by the time the evening generators were humming, and people were outside in the cooling air after the heat of the day, people were talking about Adewale. Reactions were not what Emeka expected. If you're still with me and hooked on Adewale and Emeka's journey, make sure to subscribe. I'm putting everything I've got into this story, and your support means the world. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment with your thoughts on what's coming next, and turn on notifications so you won't miss a thing. Trust me, the best is yet to come. Don't be the one who misses out. Subscribe now.